Welcome to the Big Lead. I'm Kyle Koster. That's Ryan Phillips. We've got a bit of a Friday free roll going here. We're going to talk about some of the stories we've done in the last 24 hours. Before I do that, let me just check in on Phillips. How you doing out there? How is quarantine been for you?
It's been interesting for sure. I mean, I live in San Diego, so I'm used to spending a lot of time outside, even during the winter. And so not being able to do that has kind of been a little soul crushing, and it's also been pouring here. So it's not like I can go out and go on a walk or anything. It's like we're getting hit with everything, but plenty of people have it worse. I don't have kids, so I know that's been a struggle for a lot of people, no kids in school, getting kind of locked up with that. I feel awful for my girlfriend who has to be locked up with me all day. But how about you? I know you've got the two boys. Has that been an interesting experience for you during these
Sure.
last
It's
couple of weeks?
been yeah, really. It's definitely been interesting. That's a great way to say it. It's been everybody has been talking about how they've had so much free time and how they've really been able to dig into all these different shows that are on TV. If I get to watch an hour of television or Netflix in a day, it's a miracle. It's pretty much nonstop from about 5:30 in the morning to 9:15 at night, and then I'm usually tired enough to just go right to sleep. But it'll only be several months more before we get going back into reality. And that's kind of where the first item I want to start with is this new study that was done by Seton Hall's business school that talked to sports fans and really just the general public. I think 72%, or it was like 762 participants, and 61% of them define themselves as sports fans. But anyway, they were talking about their willingness to go to a sporting event when they come back, when a vaccine has not been put in place, which is going to be the reality. And the results were really interesting. They said that only 72% said they wouldn't attend games, 12% saying they would if social distancing could be maintained. Only 13% said they would feel safe attending like they did in the past. And if you look at all the people involved that identified as sports fans, that 61% is still significant. So what's your takeaway on that data right there? Again, it's a small sample size, but I really think it really highlights that I don't think that people are going to be really willing to jump back in with both feet, even when games return and even when they start saying, it's okay, fans, you can come through the turnstile.
Well, two things. First of all, it's going to be impossible to social distance at sporting events. I mean, you might be able to split up the stands and have people in different sections or, two seats apart or whatever, but the concourses are going to be packed. I mean, it's like I've seen around here when people go for walks, you're trying to social distance, but there are paths where you're going to have to walk past someone. There's no way to do it effectively. You can do your best and maybe have people going one way on one side of the concourse, on the other, but there's going to be people crowding into small areas. What about bathrooms? Bathrooms are going to have bottlenecks where people are going to cross. So there's no way to effectively social distance at a sporting event. It's just not going to happen. You accept that risk when you go, I think, is going to be the situation with fans. What I think this means is that sports are going to have to come back without people before they come back with people. I mean, I just don't think you can dive back in. I think that the way the sports need to represent themselves is, hey, we're doing this to be safe for the fans. We're going to broadcast these on national television, as pretty much every sporting event is broadcast now anyway. But we're going to bring sports back, but we want you to be safe. So we're not going to let you in the stadium. When we figure out a way to do it safely, we'll let you in. And that will make people feel like, when they do open it up to the general public, oh, well, it's got to be safe. They would just keep broadcasting it, in an empty stadium if it wasn't. I think the NBA and the sports that are trying to come back this summer are definitely going to have to start without fans. NFL and college football, we'll see. I think the NFL in the stadium because of TV deal being such a revenue generator for the league, that I think that they will have to consider that as well. College football, I don't know how college football goes on without fans, because financially, that's where they get the lion's share of their money. I just don't know how you do it. But as far as I think this study shows, that people are going to be reluctant. And even if it's fully healthy and everything is fully fine and there's no problems and this is gone in a few months, I still think fans, it's going to take a while for people to feel comfortable going out in big groups. And I think that's what this study showed.
Yeah, and here's the problem. It's not going to be gone. I mean, This is best
No,
case
obviously.
scenario. It's been really weird to see the shift in recent days. And I want to be as positive as everybody else. And there are some positive data points that are going on, that the curve is flattening and there is light at the end of the tunnel. Having said all that, we are still in the top of the second or the bottom of the second in this country when we're talking about our fight with this wave of the coronavirus. It is not going to hit peak in other areas for 3 weeks, some places 6 weeks.
Yeah, it feels like people are seeing what might be the peak in New York and thinking that applies to everywhere, where it hasn't even hit some major metropolitan areas
So
at all yet.
absolutely. So you're not going to be able to create a situation that's safe for everybody, and people are still going to be catching it. And that's still talking about this wave. It might come back with a second wave when sports come back in like October, and that might be even more deadly. You hate to be the Debbie Downer, but there are just so many things that can happen. We're talking right now about the things that have to take place in order for sports to come back, whether with fans or without fans. I don't think we're spending enough time on how do we keep sports in our life once these realities of life, like players going to keep catching it. We're going to be in a situation where we have fans back. I'm telling you, it's not, it is a certainty that there will be a fan that goes to a sporting event that contracts this virus and dies from it. I'm sorry. That's just the way it's going to be. Like, there's no way around that. Even if that's in 3 months, if that's in 6 months, it's going to happen. And then people are going to have to decide, is it really worth going to the Toledo Kent State football game if I could lose my life over it? And I know that it's gonna have so many factors. I mean, it's gonna be so regional, right? So they're only gonna
For
let
sure, that's a big deal. Is the regional? Is one team going to be able to have fans while another team can't? That kind of thing.
of course, and those people are going to be more willing to go as fans if they haven't gone through this traumatic experience. Like, I can't imagine New Yorkers shuffling in and going to Yankee Stadium, even when this thing has calmed down. They're going to be so scarred from what happened compared to a place that's lesser hit, let's say Denver or wherever you want to insert, some place that escapes it. They're going to be more willing to go there. And then they're also going to be geographic differences in like the passion of fans in certain areas versus others. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I have been really confused and kind of concerned when I see a lot of the attitudes lately that's talking about, okay, this is a certainty that we're going to be back in a month, or even we're going to be going back to work in 3 weeks, because we are still entering this thing and we just have no idea what the future holds. There's a difference between being optimistic and being realistic about what things are going to look like. And there's not a single person out there who believes that a vaccine or a reliable vaccine is going to be developed in the next year. And we have all the experts right now who are talking about life is not going to get back to normal until we have that. So it seems like there's a couple different things happening right now and they just don't match up.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think that sports obviously are going to be low on the priority poll for some people. It's like if you have to go out, you're going to spend that time going out to the store to be in a crowd, not, to get food that you need or things like that. You're not going to spend it on what is already an expensive proposition. Going to a baseball, football, basketball game, that's expensive. Are you really going to spend that kind of money and be risking something? When you can just watch it at home from, essentially, if you're watching football at home, you're watching from the 50-yard line. You got the best seat in the house, so it's going to, and I'm wondering, we'll have to see how this plays out, but it was, things were already shifting away from places like things like college football and the NFL having ridiculous attendance every week. It was already tapering down a little. Does this supercharge that movement to where you're actually seeing more people just stay home and watch a game instead of enjoy the game day experience? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Does this change people's attitudes even more about, hey, you know what? The TV broadcasts are pretty great. We should stay home and just watch it and cook our own food here and, not have to pay $50 for parking and all of that stuff. I think in some places, Green Bay is always going to be, it's because it's a lifestyle. Green Bay is always going to sell out. Places like that are always going to sell out. But I think it'll be interesting to see how attitudes change towards that as we move forward. But yeah, I think that study was very interesting. I'd like to see a follow-up, a couple follow-up studies to verify those results. But it's that is, the sports leagues have to sit there and be kind of like, all right, we're doing no fans for a while to try and win, and we got to win them back.
Yeah, and speaking of sports leagues that are established that basically print their own money like the NFL, they're established. They can take this hit in this interim, and maybe they don't lose any actual games. Maybe they lose only stadium gate and tickets for,
Sure.
and they're able to get through it. That's not the case with smaller leagues. And we just saw the XFL today send a memo that they're ceasing operations. They've laid off all the staff. And that came after, I think they played 20 total XFL games. And I guess I'll start by saying,
and they definitely had to shut down because of this. Like they were planning on going forward. They were in the middle of this as one of the leagues that was trying to ramp up and got shut down. It was, it got overshadowed by March Madness, but they were one of the leagues, boom, had to shut down quickly.
Yes, terrible timing. And terrible timing is not unique just to the XFL. You can throw a dart and find terrible timing.
Yeah.
A lot of serious things in the world out here right now. But I thought that the XFL had real momentum. Like, it was never my cup of tea. I was never going to be the person who sat down and was like, I need to see this. I don't love football enough to just watch, oh, there's football on. I'll watch a game. I don't know the players. Because to me, I never thought that the action was that exciting. It never came close to the college game. Maybe even like, it was a replica to like a Tulsa Tulane game, maybe, like it
was basically single A football. I mean, that's what it felt like to me. There were some talented guys who stand out, but there's nothing in there that makes you say that's a fantastic product. I mean, there were little things in there that you like going to a really low minor league baseball game or something like that. I felt like there's little things to pull you in, and there's some talented guys, but you're not watching a great, amazing product that's going to bring you back night after night.
Right. But while we're on the same side of the coin when it comes to our personal enjoyment, I think that we would both agree that it had a really good game plan. And it really surprised and it really impressed me how thoughtful the rollout was, how much buzz it created. And though I was a pessimist about their future going into it, they kind of got to the point where they won me over, thinking that I think that this league has the juice to last long enough to figure out what its next iteration is. And I thought it had a real chance to be something that lasted for a long time. And I think it is it's a bummer to see that we never – I think that there's a chance where on the other side of this, they could rehire everybody and come back. But I mean, this is just, it's such a big setback.
Devastating blow.
It's tough. But I think that when the story of the XFL is written, and let's say that it fails, it won't be like the first time where it failed kind of out of hand, where you're like, oh man, Vince McMahon had a crazy idea. And it was just like, well, it was the 90s.
There's a lot of stupid bravado going on with this. They hired a lot of smart people this time. I mean, you look at the list of executives, you look at the list of people involved. These are people who knew what they were doing to some degree. The first time they hired people who knew TV, and they hired a lot of sort of alpha male, we're going to just bowl over the NFL and win this and all that. They didn't hire, strategic, smart people. This time was different. They learned their lesson to some degree, and they actually had a game plan. And the other thing is they came in saying, we're capitalized enough to last a full year. This isn't going to be the AAF. We're not going to cease operations 6 games in or whatever it was. We've actually got a plan to survive the initial wave, survive even if it stinks. We're going to survive, and we're going to bring it back and make it a thing. And so to see it, obviously, was an unforeseen circumstance. And man, it is a tough blow for what I thought was a thoughtful approach to the league.
I think what it shows us, and can show sports fans, is it kind of presents like this air of optimism going forward, because I'm of the mindset what we're going to have to do in order to get sports back. And this is for another time. It's a longer idea. But I believe that what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to temper our expectations and go forward with leagues and teams that don't look like what we previously loved.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very possible for them to put together like a 7-game NBA championship series. I don't think we're going to get the NBA playoffs. I think it's possible for them to play a 7-game baseball series with some baseball stars for charity. And I think it's going to have to be thinking outside the box, even in golf too. Like maybe not have a full complement of players, but maybe have like a 16-person tournament that takes place, opening round on Thursday, Friday, and you just play like
Right.
a tournament. But I think what the XFL did is I think that it showed that there's an appetite for non-conventional sports if you like make it hit in a certain way. And I think that that appetite will only grow because we're so desperate for it. So I think
We're looking for anything right now. I mean, you look at like people are watching esports right now because that is a system that is set up to watch to social distance basically. And you've got these guys doing NASCAR races from their home, and you've got guys doing Formula One races from their home. You've got guys playing NBA 2K from their home. I mean, people are watching because there's, we're so starved for anything that people are watching that. So, I mean, the leagues have to think outside the box. I propose this week, and I'm going to write about it, is the Major League Baseball bringing back the old one-on-one home run derby from the 1960s that they used to do, where they just had two stars in an empty park with nobody there except for guys, a pitcher, guys to shag fly balls, and a broadcaster. And it's like, and when the other guy's hitting, you bring the other player into the broadcast booth for color. There's ways to do things with only like 5 or 6 people. Of course, there'd be production people and all that, but think outside the box. Put them on a private jet so they don't have to sit next to anybody. Send them to a location. Do it at Wrigley Field. I mean, it's a picturesque ballpark, whatever. There's ways to think outside the box if you want content. If you don't want content, you want to keep it shut down until you're up again. I get that, and I think that's probably the best way to do it. But if the MLB wants to be in people's living rooms right now, that's something to do, and you could do it in prime time. There's no competition out there, which is why our next topic was kind of interesting if you look at what the UFC was trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to take that one. Every time I start talking about Dana White, I get a little worried.
You get the shakes. Yeah. The eyes start switching a little. No, look, Dana White had proposed continuing, and I wrote 2 weeks ago they should have canceled UFC 249 once Khabib Nurmagomedov.
You got it.
I'm close. When he backed out, I said they should cancel it. They're like, people were waiting for that fight, for Ferguson and Khabib to fight. And when that ended, it's like there's no point in having this card in the middle of this, even in an empty arena. He had worked and said that it was going to be on tribal land in California, so he didn't have to adhere to the rules for social distancing and all that. They were going to do it in an empty arena, just the fighters there. Then he was going to do weekly fights on this fight island that he had somehow reserved. Yesterday he came out, said UFC 249 was canceled. He said that the higher ups at ESPN, he says he has a great relationship with them. The higher ups at Disney and ESPN had told him to sort of stand down and back off. And I think they're right, because if one of those fighters gets something, who's going to be at fault? And what's the negative public reaction going to be? The interesting side to this, though, is that the UFC had a real chance to make itself a even bigger deal by being the only game in town. And by, if they put on a pay-per-view level event and just broadcast it on ESPN, like forget the pay-per-view revenue, just broadcast it on ESPN, there'd be a lot of eyes on that because it's the only live sports, and so I think it would have been very interesting if they'd been able to do this. Could the UFC, could casual fans, could even non-casual fans who have no interest in the UFC been like, well, it's a live sporting event that I don't know the outcome to, that's not a video game. Let me check this out. They could have won over a lot of people if those events were exciting and good, I think.
True. What you're saying, you're exactly right. The potential and the possibility existed there, but you also need to look at it through that lens when deciding just how heinous of an idea it was. That clearly Disney knew that, right?
Oh, for sure. No,
knew that they would be the only game in town. They knew the appeal. They knew how important it would be to put live sports there, and still they decided to say, you know what, man? No.
Let's back off.
It's just not happening. And it's like, it reminded me of that scene from The Office where he tries to say, like why something can't happen in the warehouse, and it's like there's going to be out why kids can't come. There's alcohol. There's dangerous equipment. It's a school night. There's going to be gambling. Is that enough reasons for you? Like there are just so many things
Yeah.
with this where it's like, and again, and really kind
Oh,
of the straw that broke the camel's back to me was like the fact that there was going to be no medical facilities for what 40 or 50 miles for
yeah.
a sport that needs to have medical staff on hand almost more than any other. And that is such an important point that that stood in the way of this UFC thing happening, because when you look at these, in my opinion, harebrained ideas to play the NBA in a tent city in Las Vegas or on a cruise line or whatever they're going to do, or play the NFL in the hills of West Virginia and all this stuff, you need to think about the infrastructure that you need to build around them. And then what are you going to do? Are you going to divert either medical equipment to this place, or are you going to make it so if an important NBA player or executive has a medical emergency, you're going to you have to use a helicopter to get him to where he's going? Like that's insane too. So there's
Yeah.
so many things that could be learned from this. When you try to figure out a workaround, you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with other problems that exist. And Dana
Yeah.
White is the kind of guy who says, I'm going to get through this and not pay
I'm going to figure out a way to bulldoze through it. Yeah.
And, part of that is admirable, and it's got him to where he is right now. But this was a bad idea that was never going to happen from the get-go. I guess the more pressing question is what changes in a month when he tries to do this again?
I don't know. And I really don't. And maybe there'll be more widely available testing so they can test everybody there, test everybody after, monitor them, send them, if there's any red flags, they can send them to, a place to get treatment. Whatever it is, I don't know what's going to change in a month. I will say, and there's two things about Dana White. Dana White is a guy who does not let anybody get in his way. He bulldozes people who get in his way. And again, you're right. That's admirable to in a way that has made him successful. And you say wow, this guy works his tail off and is not going to let any, when he has a good vision, he's not going to, but at the same time, it causes you to be reckless. And this was a reckless idea. I mean, it really was. And the fact that he had to try and have it on tribal land just to avoid sanctions and avoid rules, it just leads you to think well, is he putting on the Thunderdome? There's a right way and a wrong way to do this stuff. And I think the Fight Island idea is interesting if you're going to do one fight, and then you can have your bases covered as far as medical personnel or whatever. But if you have a full card of 6 fights or 8 fights like they usually do, I'm sure they'll cut it to 4, I think, instead of doing a prelim and then another card, a pre-fight card, and then the real card. So if they cut it to, let's say, 4 fights, and you have limited medical personnel, which you're probably going to have limited medical personnel and facilities, that's, dangerous. Because what if 2 people in 2 fights need severe medical help? I mean, people are punching each other with bare knuckles. Essentially, you have knuckle protectors. These aren't boxing gloves. And even if it were boxing gloves, it's insanely dangerous. I just think that you're going to have limited resources, especially if you go on an island in the middle of nowhere to do this. I think if you do 1 fight, a night every 3 nights or something like that, there's a possibility to have this be kind of safe enough to be just on the other side of decency. But if you're putting on a full card of fights with limited medical personnel, limited facilities at your disposal in the middle of nowhere, the chances that something bad happen just go up exponentially. So it'll be interesting to see what he has planned. I don't know. It feels reckless. At the same time, the sports fan in me is kind of well, it'd be cool to have some live events, but no, it's not okay. I honestly think golf is the best way to do the best sport for coming back in this, just because of the built-in way it is. I mean, there's super low chance for injury. They automatically social distance. The people they will be close to, they're probably close to on every other day anyway, with their caddy or whoever they bring out to caddy for them. I think it's full first. But yeah, the UFC thing it's been interesting, and all teacher fights are suspended right now. There's no plans for anything else, but I don't know how they come back. I just think there's no way to safely do it.
Yeah, no, good points. I think the last thought for this that I had was just you're going to see part of me that believes that adults should be able to make their own decision. If they want to fight for a purse, go ahead. But the problem with that is that you're going to be seeing it playing out in the sports world in a much smaller scale as it's playing out in the real world. Unfortunately, with this is the people of means don't have to make those difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And the people who are not financially stable are going to have to take more risks, whether that's stepping into the octagon or whether that's continuing to work at a place that's not safe, or taking a dangerous job doing that. And I think that in that way, sports, as they always do, are mirroring real life. And I think that there's going to be a lot of athletes who find themselves in really interesting situations, torn between providing for their family.
Impossible choices.
Yeah, and it's going to be really tough. And I think the shame of it is they're going to be getting a lot of criticism for deciding one way or the other. And I think that's going to be the next thing that we're going to have to look at. All right, that's a Friday free roll. Thanks for joining us. We'll keep posting over the weekend. Everybody stay safe.